Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're tackling a big one. How do you actually run a modern microservices app without all the chaos? We're going to break down how Kubernetes takes you from that tangled mess to a world of clean orchestration and control.
All right, so here's our game plan. First, we'll look at the big problem with microservices. Then, we'll see how Kubernetes comes to the rescue. We'll get into the nitty-gritty of its core building blocks, see how they all come to life, and wrap up with how to run this stuff strong in production.
So, first things first, let's really set the stage here. Why does something like Kubernetes even need to exist? Well, it all boils down to one thing, the massive, and I mean massive, complexity that just comes with the territory when you're dealing with microservices.
Okay, so you did it. You broke up that big, clunky monolith into all these neat little independent services. Awesome, right? But now what? You've just traded one big problem for like 100 tiny ones. How in the world are you supposed to deploy, scale, and connect all these different pieces, especially when they're all moving at the same time?
And this really spells it out, doesn't it? You're at a fork in the road. Down one path, you've got what I call manual chaos. One little service hiccups and boom, the whole system starts toppling over like dominoes. Scaling up for a traffic spike, it's a frantic, all-hands-on-deck panic. But on the other path, with Kubernetes, it's a completely different story. Faults get isolated, scaling is automatic. The system basically takes care of itself.
And that chaos? That is the exact problem Kubernetes was born to solve. Honestly, the best way to think about it isn't just as another tool. It's more like a new kind of operating system. Not for a single computer, but for your entire data center, your entire cluster of machines. It's an OS for the cloud.
Yeah, and it's not just some band-aid you slap on top of your problems, it's a whole ecosystem. All those things that microservices desperately need to survive, like finding each other or making sure one failure doesn't cause a catastrophe, those aren't add-ons in Kubernetes. They are baked right into its DNA from the very beginning.
So what does this actually mean for you? It means you get all this power right out of the box. You can deploy your services whenever you want, totally independent of each other. You can scale from 1 to 100 instances with just one command. And you can sleep at night knowing the system is watching your back, automatically healing itself if something breaks. And the best part? You can do all this with zero downtime for your users. That's how you tame a complex architecture.
Okay, so that's the what and the why. Now let's get into the how. To really get a handle on Kubernetes, you got to know its basic building blocks. Think of these as the Lego bricks you'll be using every single day.
And everything, I mean everything, starts with the pod. It's the absolute smallest thing you can deploy. A pod is basically a little wrapper around your container. It gives it a place to live, its own IP address on the network. Just think of it as the individual house for your tiny application.
But here's the thing. You almost never touch a pod directly. That would be like managing every single brick in a city. Instead, you use something called a deployment. You just tell the deployment, hey, I want 3 copies of this app running, and it acts like a city planner. It makes sure those 3 houses are always there, and if one burns down, boom, it automatically builds a new one to replace it.
Okay, so if pods can come and go, how does anything talk to them? I mean, their IP addresses are always changing. Well, that's where the service comes in. It's brilliant, really. A service puts a stable, single network endpoint in front of a whole group of pods. It's like giving them a permanent street address that never changes, even if the houses behind that address are constantly being torn down and rebuilt. So that's the basic rhythm, the fundamental workflow. It's really just 3 steps. 1, you package your app into a container. 2, you hand it to a deployment to run it. And 3, you put a service in front of it so other things can find it. Containerize, deploy, expose. That's the core loop.
All right, so we've got our building blocks: pods, deployments, services. Now, let's bring them to life. How do these things actually talk to each other? How do they handle a sudden flood of traffic? And, a really important one, how do we make sure they're actually healthy and doing their job?
This right here, this is the aha moment for so many people. Inside the cluster, all that messy networking just disappears. Your services don't care about IP addresses anymore. They just find each other using simple, clean DNS names. So your user service can just talk to product service directly by name. It's like magic.
And this is a huge mental shift. You have to get this. You stop thinking about servers. You stop thinking about IP addresses. You start thinking in services. It's a higher level of abstraction, and it is the absolute foundation for building systems that are flexible, resilient, and frankly, just easier to manage.
Okay, that's great for internal traffic, but what about the outside world? How do users actually get to your app? For that, you use an ingress. Think of it as the main highway entrance into your city. It's a smart router that looks at the incoming traffic and directs it to the right neighborhood, the right service based on the URL.
Now, this is non-negotiable. You have to have health checks. Kubernetes gives you two main types. The liveness probe basically asks, hey, are you alive or are you totally frozen? If the answer is no, Kubernetes just kills it and starts a new one. Then there's the readiness probe. It asks a different question. Are you ready to take on new work right now? If the app is, say, starting up and still loading data, it can say, nope, not yet, and Kubernetes will wait to send it traffic. You absolutely need both of them.
Okay, so getting an app up and running is one thing, but keeping it running smoothly in production, day in and day out, that takes discipline. So let's talk about the best practices that are, not really optional. When your app is spread across dozens of services, how do you figure out what's going on when something goes wrong? You need what we call the 3 pillars of observability. You need metrics, the numbers, like CPU usage. You need logs, the event records, the why something happened. And you need traces, which follow a single request as it jumps from service to service. You need all 3 to see the full picture. And look, this is the bottom line for production. If you can't see what's happening inside your system, you can't run it, period. It's that simple. Without observability, your microservices are just a bunch of black boxes, and trying to run a system of black boxes is, well, it's a recipe for disaster. All right, think of this slide as your production cheat sheet. On the left, you've got all the common mistakes that will cause you pain. On the right, you've got the best practices that'll save you. Things like not setting resource limits. That's a huge one. You have to tell Kubernetes how much CPU and memory your service needs to start, that's its request, and the absolute max it's allowed to use, that's its limit. It stops one greedy service from taking down the whole node. Seriously, don't skip any of these. So when you put it all together, when you take these building blocks, the pods, the deployments, the services, and you combine them with these production best practices, you make that leap. You go from wrestling with chaos to gracefully orchestrating a truly modern, scalable, and resilient application. You basically have the blueprint for building a cloud-native city. The only question left is, what are you going to build with it?